Hello everyone. Thank you for accompanying me in this presentation. I am very excited about it. My name is Carie Batson from Las Tunas, Cuba, a teacher educator at the University of Las Tunas and also a part-time teacher at the Arts Professional School in the city. First of all, I want to thank the SIG committee for this opportunity of letting me share the results of this action research I carried out as a winner of the SIG scholarship last year. And I have entitled my presentation, Teaching Pronunciation Beyond Technology, Practical Approaches for Every Teacher. Apart from having this presentation, I would like to thank the IATEFL staff and all the members of this prestigious organization, which I am very honored to be part of, which was a dream I was cradling for many years until the moment, thank God, that I had that opportunity. So this research has to do with teaching pronunciation, which is not an easy task, but I carried it out with much enthusiasm, and the results are the ones I'm going to show. The context for this investigation, as I said before, is the Province Professional Art School El Cucalambe in Las Tunas. The participants of my investigation were 17 students from junior high who specialized in music and dancing and theater, some of them. So I have a profile of my students, and most of them come from rural areas, so though a school is in the city, there is a confluence of students from the city and from the rural areas. So the focus of this investigation had to do with improving their pronunciation due to the many constraints they had during their learning. So why a focus on pronunciation? Well, first of all, I think that, and I believe it is like that pronunciation, when you pronounce words correctly, you have the opportunity to prevent misunderstanding. Also, you enhance overall skills having to do with communication. But we teachers tend to focus on sounds mainly, and we disregard some other elements which have to do with pronunciation. So the rationale for this presentation, the things are inside this action research. The things I mostly pay attention to were sound production, phoneme-grapheme correspondences, articulation, accent, stress, rhythm, comprehensibility, pitch, intelligibility, fluency, among other aspects, due to the importance, the relevance they acquire in each lesson, and also in building learners' awareness on using intonation to express emotions and attitudes, and also to emphasize why we emphasize or make particular things important when we speak with the appropriate intonation. So I carried out a diagnostic test, which indicator was students' intelligibility in their native language source. So what did I find in this diagnostic test? Well, I find limitations having to do with the limited access that students have to audio models and multimedia. Also, students lack of exposure to authentic pronunciation models or materials for real communication, which were challenges I identified and I worked through them during the whole year, the academic term, the investigation and implementation took place. So the objective I delimited for the investigation was to upgrade learners' pronunciation of English non-existing sounds in the Spanish language, specifically in the Cuban norm, using proven practical strategies without the use or very low use of digital tools, which is the reality in my context. So I drew some personal aims, which were very specific for my lessons, which had to do with inserting a proposal of a pronunciation corner for each lesson I was going to teach, and also in a bulletin board in the classroom. I also wanted to make learners more aware of how language is used, particularly on pronunciation issues. And I also wanted to focus on specific pronunciation problems of the class and correct them, mainly on teaching comprehensibility and intelligibility, and as I said before, to make them aware of the importance and the incidence of these two aspects in their communication. I also wanted to teach learners to use dictionaries and to check spelling through this ability as they attain this ability. I also wanted to foster student skills in pronunciation and to carry out as much as possible activities having to do with communication. So the theoretical references I mostly focused on were on the basis of Cuba's SERF's adoption and adaptation for English teaching, rating, and grading pronunciation. So the things they mostly pay attention to is to sound production, but there are all the other elements were put aside in this adoption Cuba has made of the SERFs in Cuba. For example, grapheme phoneme correspondences are just seen very slightly in reading lessons, but reading aloud is not one of the issues that is most carried out in Cuba. The aspect that is more, or the sub-skill which is much pay attention to in Cuba is to that of reading comprehension. Reading comprehension mainly for detecting or analyzing which is the main idea in a text, mainly. But so I also paid attention to articulation, to accent, to stress, to rhythm, and all that I already referred to. So I also have my own beliefs about teaching pronunciation, and I know I have already delimited what best works for me. For example, I strongly believe that teaching the International Phonetic Alphabet is very important in any grade, any level I teach. I always try to teach my learners to know how is the representation, the graphic representation of some of the sounds and the correspondence with the letters in the alphabet, so that they can use the dictionary and use the correct pronunciation in dictionaries. So not only for vowel sounds, but also for consonantal sounds too. And I also have this strong belief on teaching. That is one of the things that best works for me, that is teaching the speech apparatus. So whenever I start teaching an English course in any grade or at any educational level, if there isn't a space for teaching the parts of the human body, I create that space because I am particularly interested on the students knowing the speech apparatus. I think that this is one of the easiest ways to make them aware of how sounds are produced. So this is another aspect, another moment that makes them learn parts of the human body, and this is something they experience because those are our organs of speech. So what did I concentrate on in my teaching? Though my lessons were skill-based lessons, because I taught reading, speaking, writing, and listening, I paid close attention, very special attention to those sounds which are not present or have variations in the Spanish language and specifically in the Cuban norm. So it is very difficult for our students to pronounce the V sound. It is also difficult to produce fricatives which are not present or may have a variation in the Spanish language. The flower doesn't exist, and an accented with the same sound with the R coloring also it is absent. The dental and the second one exists, but it has a variation, and the affricative j doesn't exist. So there are many reasons for paying close attention to these specific sounds in my teaching. So I use practical procedures and strategies which are very well known. For example, listening and imitation. I served as a model for my students to repeat in chorus or individually. I used also minimal pairs, tongue twisters, and rhymes. I also used I used gestures to represent sounds, mainly that in the case of short and long vowels. Also clapping and tapping for syllable and sentence stress practice. Also backward and forward chaining. I also used to pair my students to practice and correct each other. I also used to rotate students so that all of them practice the same model in the lesson, and peer feedback and pair work, which also helped in those moments devoted to pronunciation teaching. Within the practical procedures and strategies I used personalization, because I selected materials which were relevant to the students, and so as to increase their interest, their motivation, and to engage them in the lesson. As they were students from the professional art school, they study arts, I taught them the parts of the piano. Also, I taught the parts of the guitar. within the skill-based lesson I made those variations, preparing my own texts having to do with those aspects related to arts, so that they gain in learning the language which had to do with their future professional role, the things they were studying for. And this was something very interesting, because I got very good, I had feedback from my students, and they liked those kinds of contents when I inserted them in the syllabus I was teaching, because unfortunately the syllabus I was assigned to teach had not these peculiarities. I had to do some transformations in correspondence with the class profile I had, and to their interests, and to the diagnostic test I carried out. So this was one of the things that I could use throughout the whole academic year, because this was content that I could relate to other topics having to do with arts, culture, and common knowledge. So I also tried to model with my voice those sounds I wanted them to attain, to learn, and so it was not difficult to pair them at some times, and so they learned how to move their arms to mark intonation, and also tapping or clapping for marking stress, word stress, which is quite different in the Spanish language for the students to attain it. So the use of gestures, as they are art students, they are very easygoing in that sense. It was not difficult to introduce sounds or to represent sounds through gestures. In the case of minimal pairs and tongue twisters and rhymes, there were things that helped me to highlight and to contrast with the Spanish language what they had to learn. And finally, in the case of peer feedback, they used to, in the classification, in the profile I have of my students, I had detected those who were leaders in pronunciation and who could help more or help me monitor how pronunciation was being carried out in the classroom. So this feedback was strategic because it was intentional, mainly for accuracy, for comprehensibility, and for intelligibility, so that I could make them aware of how important it was to be understood and to make people to pronounce words or to speak in such a way that people understand you when you say something. But I was very aware also that overcorrection can be discouraging, so I tried to keep a balance between correcting and letting them flow in fluency activities and exercises and so on. So this is one of the things I really have to say, that I am very, let's say, happy with the results, because I can say that things really changed in my context with using scarce resources in that limited classroom with low resources. In my students, where the first aspect I have to highlight is the case of awareness and accuracy. So they became aware on how important it is to be accurate when you speak. And mainly, I taught them the importance of the production of final sounds. In English, in Spanish, we aspirate most of final sounds. We sometimes don't pronounce sounds within a word. And in English, it is very important to be accurate, so that in order not to change the meaning of a word. And also, they became aware on how important it is to put all the aspects of pronunciation together in order not to affect fluency. On my teaching practice, I know for the many years of practice I have carried out, that if you speak slowly for students to understand, then you make them you bring constraints regarding fluency, regarding intelligibility, because if you speak too slow, then it is not normal language. We don't speak like that in life. So it is very important to keep all the aspects having to do with pronunciation together, because English is has become or becomes day by day a vehicular language. So in any context you are, no matter where people, where the persons that are gathered come from, most of them have English as the language for communication. And we see that not only in all social events, mainly. We see that in precisely, it is an example here in IATF. Teachers come from all over the world, and the language, the vehicle to communicate is English. So it is important to keep in mind that in the moment we speak, we need to say it. We cannot say words separately in order so that students comprehend or understand, because we affect other aspects on pronunciation. And we know that we need to monitor those activities the students carry out, and to focus on precisely that fluency, that accuracy, that intelligibility, and that comprehensibility, which is something I know. I have the facts that they became aware of this. So in my teaching practice, I am very satisfied with the result of the pronunciation corner, not only in the classroom but also in the, that is to say, I placed it on the bulletin board at the back of the classroom. So they had the pronunciation corner, and each time they even, the students brought issues, and they brought tips on pronunciation to place it on the bulletin board. But I also had it in my lesson plan, because I planned my lesson always taking into consideration that I had to pay attention to specific aspects on pronunciation, no matter the skill I was going to work with, or the soft skill I wanted to work with. So teaching all pronunciation issues in context was for communication is something that uh, I really became very aware of. So I gained a sound mastery of teaching pronunciation, though I am used to, as part of the staff of the teaching education problem, we pay much attention to pronunciation, and it is a subject as such. But here in other school levels, it tends to be disregarded. So the understanding and to be understood was something I have now as a rule, teaching that. And I continue, or I keep my belief that teaching the speech organs and in every course we carry out, it's very important. Also teaching IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, is also, I keep that belief. But something else came across in it, and it is the compromise to be aware and to plan, to organize your lesson so that you become coherent in your teaching, and specifically in those didactic issues that have to do with teaching pronunciation. So, how did I manage to integrate pronunciation teaching into everyday lesson activities? Well, the first thing I have to say that sometimes we're not 5 minutes as such, but 2-3 minutes I devoted, I focused my lesson just in pronunciation and the integration of pronunciation with the sub-skill I was teaching, or the skill I was teaching in my lesson. So that integration was one of the things that made me focus specifically on what I wanted my students to attain. Of course, there were challenges I have to face in my low context and my low technology context, and there were barriers, limitations, and obstacles, but I tried to turn them into opportunity to raise students' confidence to face communication situations. What happens? One of the things I learned in the implementation of this action research was that you can never leave the students step out of the classroom without a homework having to do with English communication, because in this context where English is not used outside the classroom, you need to leave a task, to leave an activity, an action, so that they carry it out as a homework, or have a challenge to face in order to bring it and give you the results as a teacher, give you the teacher the results of these challenges they had to face, or these limitations they have to overcome. It is very important because they only use Spanish. So if you leave them without a homework, then nothing happens, and there are very few hour lessons for English in the curriculum. English is not one of the most important or the more time to one of, is not one of the subjects to which much time is devoted. All the contrary, there are just a few hours in the syllabus. The syllabus has just a few hours, and the curriculum has also very limited opportunities for English. And what happens also, which is an obstacle teachers have to face, if there is something to do away with during the day, it is the English lesson, the one that is put aside, because they carry a double purpose in the school. They study music or dancing or theater or whatever, and they also have the general curriculum, but they praise and they pay more attention to those cultural activities, things which have to do with rehearsing, which have to do with art as such, presentations and so on, and not to specifically the English language. It is not something that happens. I have an anecdote which is I liked the results when I taught the part of a stage for students, specific for all the students in the classroom, but those it was connoted for those students of theater students or dancing students, because they should know the parts of the theater. And what happened? They didn't know in Spanish which were the parts of the stage. So they learned together at the same time the parts of a stage of a theater. They learned together English and Spanish in that topic, which was a great satisfaction for me. Now, what do I want to recommend? Let's say these are key takeaways for teachers everywhere. I strongly believe that planning and preparing for teaching pronunciation is paramount. No matter the skill you have planned to develop in your lesson. So, together with the skill you are going to develop, or the sub-skill within the skill. Let's say you are going to teach speaking, and within speaking you are going to concentrate on fluency, not accuracy specifically. You need to plan those aspects regarding pronunciation that you want your students to step out of the classroom clear of. The case of listening comprehension, which is also neglected, and it is so close to pronunciation because intelligibility is here with a very strong presence, and also communication, understanding is very close here. You need to carefully plan and prepare those aspects on pronunciation you want your students to step out of the classroom with. Never leave that by itself. You need to plan it. So it is also important to practice in context, not isolated sounds. You need to practice all the elements having to do with pronunciation in context. So you have to take into account thought groups, prominence, intonation, rhythm, reduced pitch, and linking all of them together. This is something very important I learned, let's say that I reinforced, because I knew it, but as I am a part-time teacher now, I have not had the opportunity to teach, for example, junior high, just for a few moments, but here with this senior high group, I had the opportunity to take all this into consideration. It is also important to carry out much listening on the part of the students, and you teacher, for the case of these low technology contexts, to be a good model. So at the time of planning your lesson, plan also which are the things you are going to give as a model, so that the students don't miss a good pronunciation or a good model on your part. So you have to model pronunciation issues and invite your students to repeat first in chorus and then individually, or by small groups first and then individually. But you have to do all this in every lesson, devoting time, allowing time for those issues on pronunciation. So, which were the results and the impact of this classroom action research? First of all, my students' progress. I could observe their improvement. Of course, there was clearer speech, they increased confidence and awareness, and there was a better listening discrimination also. I said at the beginning that they come from rural areas, most of them, and they don't have the opportunity, most of them, to have an English teacher until they come to the urban area, to school in the urban areas, because English teachers in the rural areas are very scarce. So you don't have, I had the opportunity to see their progress and also to see their motivation towards English learning and speaking, because this is real. English is for communication in many contexts, and they will have the opportunity perhaps to come across meetings, conferences, performances, where they meet people for our artists from different contexts. So English will be their vehicle for communication, and I insisted in this aspect for them to know that it was a need to learn English and to speak English. So regarding my professional growth, I increased my confidence in teaching pronunciation features, and also I reinforced my awareness in planning them all together so as to attain better results. Regarding the feedback from my students, in the interviews I sometimes formally or informally I used to carry out, this is one that called my attention, this quote. One of my students told me one day, he was telling others while I was talking to them, he was telling another student that he liked it when I insisted him to repeat, because he knew that he could do it very well on his own at the time he had to do it alone. So this was something impactful for me. It had a great impact to know that this student and others liked me to tell them to repeat when I insisted them to repeat, to better the pronunciation of sounds, or the intonation, or the stress in the syllables or in a sentence. I also had an anecdote here. One day I said in the group, talking about sentence stress, it is not the same to say I love you a great deal, than to say yes, I love you a great deal. There is a difference. And so they noticed and became aware of the importance of intonation and stress in sentences. So, which are the lessons I learned? It is sometimes we teachers don't think that we do research because we just bring something new to the classroom and we want to improve something, but we don't make a record on that, or we don't write that down. We don't have jots down about this, and all these pedagogical experiences are let's say advanced, because sometimes you do things you never did before, or things that you plan specifically to see the improvement in your students, and that is action research. But sometimes people don't take it too seriously, and I know of teachers who have many activities they with much let's say with much creativity they have carried out in their lessons, and they don't do anything with that. Just put it aside and sometimes repeat it and some others not. But action research and advanced pedagogical experiences are tools for sustainable teacher development. So we must jot down and somehow publish or socialize what we do in our classrooms in order to make our students better in our subjects. So consistency, this is another lesson I learned. Consistency and commitment and compromise are a need in pronunciation teaching. For example, it is key to do short daily practice. It is more effective than infrequent long sessions in teaching pronunciation. I also learned that visual and physical aids, for example, mirrors, diagrams, gestures, are powerful, low-cost resources teachers can exploit more. And I also learned that peer feedback fosters a supportive learning environment and increases students' engagement. Now, which are my recommendations? My recommendations are to encourage teachers to use their own voice as a model and leverage classroom resources like mirrors, paper, their hands, and also handouts. To give handouts just to encourage our students to have better pronunciation. Sometimes we put this aside, in my context, this is sound teaching in reality. And to build the pronunciation corner, which for me was very profitable, with charts, diagrams at the end of the classroom in the bulletin board, to have a place specifically for pronunciation, and also within your lesson plan. And to foster a culture of experimentation and reflection among teachers. I was the only teacher on this action research, but I had the opportunity to interact with a fellow teacher from the university, and it was very profitable for me. It helped me a lot. So my conclusions are that a focus on correct pronunciation teaching helps improve students' communication, prevents from misunderstanding, enhances overall skill development, builds confidence on spoken language, helps understand effortlessly, and all this makes students feel more comfortable at social or professional settings. And I am talking in advance for the future, in their future work. When they gather, when they have the opportunity perhaps to go outside the country or something like that. There is a need to continue rethinking and improving English foreign language teaching, for English becomes more and more a global language. a vehicle to bring together human commitments. And finally, I think that effective pronunciation is also possible in low technology settings. These are my references, and this is all I have. So I am ready for questions, comments, recommendations to better up my work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ayatefel, and thank you, Prosing, and all the ones who gather here today. Thank you very much.